Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about the State of the Union and Biden and a whole bunch of questions that came in from people in Europe about Russia and this weird overlap that occurred. Since we're going to talk about the State of the Union, I know people are going to ask for like a general take on how it went. Given the situation, the state of the world, I think he did really well. But there was one part in it that gave me pause. And I don't know that it would have if I hadn't received all of these questions in the previous 12 hours. You know, because I'm an American and I'm used to that kind of rhetoric. But there's that part in the speech where he gets all fiery. And he's like, we will defend every inch of NATO territory. Making it seem like that's something they might actually have to do. And that's what the questions were about. Questions from people in Europe. Everybody who sent one was in a NATO country. And they're concerned about a conventional offensive from Russia. And they're wondering if that's a likely thing. Nah, it's not. Not really. As has been covered all over the news, it is not going well for Russia in Ukraine. No disrespect meant to the military in Ukraine. Ukraine is not NATO. Every Russian war planner is aware of how bad it's going. They're aware that they are making mistakes that NATO demonstrated 30 years ago that you couldn't make if you expected to even stand a chance. And they're doing them now. So, unless Putin has just completely lost the plot, that's not a realistic thing. Russian war planners understand how badly it's going. When I talk about it on this channel, I tend to focus on the unconventional aspects, the irregular stuff. The conventional stuff is going even worse. Ukraine should not have been this much of an issue. The errors that they're making in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are making them pay for it because it's a mistake. Against NATO, that would be unforgiving. No Russian war planner believes that it can tangle with NATO now. You know, I've talked about it on the channel for years, how Russia is a near peer. They're not actually a peer nation. They don't have the same capabilities. The performance in Ukraine demonstrated that they are even further from a peer than most people believed. Those mistakes, that convoy is a perfect example. The convoy near the capital there. That alone will tell Russian war planners they can't mess with NATO. Because 30 years ago, a similar situation occurred, a whole bunch of vehicles massed on a road. All of those Russian war planners remember what happened on Highway 80 in Iraq during the first Gulf War. All the vehicles lined up, right? Some A-6 intruders, you know, the aircraft made famous during Vietnam. They took out the lead vehicles and the end vehicles. And then NATO pounded those vehicles into the ground for 10 hours. When the smoke cleared, the devastation was so immense that the incident became known as the Highway of Death. To this day, there's still not an accurate count on the number of vehicles. It's somewhere between 1,200 and 2,000. That's a pretty big margin. The mistake that is being made in Ukraine right now is something that NATO proved it would exploit 30 years ago, using aircraft from Vietnam that the U.S. deemed were obsolete 20 years ago. The idea that Russia would be able to even remotely hold its own against all of NATO, it's not a thing. And every Russian war planner knows that. So unless Putin has just completely lost it, a conventional fight between Russian forces and NATO forces because Russia invaded, that's not a thing. And I think that Russian commanders are so aware of this. I think if Putin actually ordered it, he might face, let's just call it direct opposition from his generals, because they know it would be pointless. That's not something I would worry about if I was in a NATO country. Now, for other countries in Europe that aren't part of NATO, there's a slightly higher risk, but with the exception of Moldova, I wouldn't even have it on my radar. It is incredibly unlikely. They understand that the technological gap that has developed and the logistical and intelligence gaps that have developed were just demonstrated to the world. What happened on Highway 80 happened 30 years ago. Think about all of the technological developments that happened in your phone in the last 30 years. Imagine what happened in NATO's technology. And it is clear that Russian technology has not actually kept up. It is clear that Russian logistical ability is lacking. So this isn't something I would worry about. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.